After a career of working on nuclear systems and engineering solutions deep under the ocean, you might think I'd pick something in retirement that was simple and more relaxed. But that's not me. I like a challenge. Whether it's systems, tools, procedures, taking something that's complex and turning it into something useful. About a year ago, I bought a 3D printer, and I thought it would be a fun hobby. I could print a few things, fix a few things, but something happened over that. I realized that wasn't just printing objects. I was rebuilding a new way of thinking, a way of contributing, a way of problem solving again. And today I'd like to talk about how 3D printing evolved from a simple curiosity into a mission to create a process to print something that actually can make a difference. So if you're into learning or in retirement or looking for something new to try, then this video may also be for you. So let's dive in. So why did I start 3D printing? Well, as I said, I started about a year ago, and the first machine I bought was this one over here. It's a Bambu Studios A1. Very good machine. Bambu was top of the line, and it has the ability so you don't have to do a lot of bed leveling and calibration and everything. Pull it out of the box, plug it in, and you can be printing within 15 minutes. So I like that. And as the years went on, we started to get more. So as you see, these two here are Bambu Studios P1Ss. And as you see, they're enclosed, which allows us to do more with the printing. Now, I'll confess, as with each new 3D printer guy, I went through printing all the gadgets I could find. I started out printing the Benchy, which is a requirement of every 3D printer. I printed articulated dragons. I found other toys, that you can print. I was going through them all. I did find some useful stuff though too. I printed, organizers like a battery holder and all that stuff. And then I got to the point where I was very proud. I found a submarine model. So I printed this myself and put it together. And it was a big accomplishment, I thought. But I'll have to admit, at some point you get to, I came around to the question again, what's the purpose? What's my mission here? What can I do with this other than just printing gadgets? Now, I'll also say that I'm still print gadgets. I like printing them. I found for my grandchildren, they liked for their birthday parties, we made them party favors that they can give the other kids, which were a hit. We printed many different things, but I still needed to figure out what was the mission. What can I do with 3D printing? After being in the military, associated both in the Navy and the Department of Defense for over 40 years, I was used to structure and a purpose for everything. On the submarine, every valve had a purpose. Every tool solved a problem. So after a year of printing gadgets, I realized I missed working with intention, building something that had a real world purpose. And I realized there's a lot of power in these 3D machines here. And so at that point, 3D printing went from a hobby for me to a challenge. A way that I could start thinking again as an engineer. And again, not with the pressure of operating a nuclear reactor on a submarine, but still an engineering mindset with the freedom to create. And that's where we are. That's what got me to this point. It became a chance to do something incredible with these machines, something to create something useful, something that people need, something that can make a difference. And again, with the changes that are going on in the 3D printing world, there's a lot that can be done. So that's where I am now, and that's where this mission begins. For me, this shift happened gradually. It started by noticing things around the house, a broken latch, a bracket that needed to be repaired, some kind of organization for my tool. And then I realized I don't have to buy something, I can make it. And that's where this change really started to occur, because 3D printing isn't about the printers, it's about the process. It's about seeing a problem, designing a solution, testing it, and adjusting. And that's when I realized something important. This was the same mindset I've always had, this curiosity, looking for precision. How can I build things to make something better? And only now the stakes are lower, but the freedom is much higher. So 3D printing became a training ground. Instead of printing things just because they look cool, I started to ask a question: how can I design a process to make things to solve a problem? Not just prints, solutions, tools, improvements. And that's where this mission really started to take off. So let's talk about this 3D printing process as a mission. What's the mission objective? Well, it is to create prints from the very beginning and print a product that is useful to others. What are the resources? Well, now you need the 3D printers, and again, there's some cost to getting into those, but 3D printers are getting cheaper. Like the A1 in there, you can find that for $300. So you have that. You have to buy filament, which is what you use to create these prints. And then you need some kind of CAD program to create your process. And again, those are free, and we'll talk about those in a bit. But I've simplified the 3D process into 3 phases: the idea phase, the prep phase, and the printer phase. So for the idea phase, you have to come up with what you want to print, obviously. And you can go to programs and find lots of prints that are already made up for you, thousands of prints. There's different sources. There's a site called Thingiverse or Thangs, where you can go in, find a file for something you want to make, just transfer it into the printer and print it. Bamboo Studio has their own Maker World, which has a lot of stuff that it can transfer directly into the printer. So you can go that way, or you can try to design something yourself through a CAD program. Now, as I said, there's a number of them out there at different levels of ease to use and ability to do new things. The one that I use is called Tinkercad. It's a useful program, and at this level, it does what I need. So from there, you start talking about the prep phase. And on the slide, on the infograph there, it says the slicing software. Now, to understand what they mean by slicing, a 3D printer creates a print in levels. It starts, and each layer is right around 0.2 millimeters high. So it starts printing, and that's how it designs it. So it has to take this file from the CAD program and determine what the printer is going to print at each layer. But along with this, in the program, you have to understand how you're building it. How strong do you want it? Is it on the printer? Do you need to create supports? All this goes into the slicing software, transferring the model to a language that the printer can understand. From there, you need to talk about the machines and materials. As I've talked about, I've got two different types of printers. The A1, which is an open bed printer, which you can print a lot of stuff with. But then if you want to go to higher materials, you need an enclosure like the P1S's, which allows you to do a little bit more. So you need the printer, but you also need the filament. And that's a whole nother topic to talk about, is the different types of filament. The most common type you'll see is PLA, which is good for prototyping, making simple gadgets. It's easy to print with, but it's not very resistant to UV rays to the sun. So if you take it outside and leave it in your car, you would see it start to melt and warp. But it's still a very good filament. Then the next level you can get is the PETG, which is a little bit stronger and more resistant, and you can still print it on a P1. And then you can get it, then the next level, you start getting into the ABS and ASA are a couple examples. They're very strong, they're UV resistant, high temperature capabilities, but the issues with that is they are susceptible to moisture, so you need to make sure you dry them properly and that you have the proper heat in your printer. That's why those P1S's are there. And there's a multitude of other different types of filament. One that I want to point out that we printed with is called TPU. It's a very elastic filament. And in fact, you can print a basketball, which has a lot of the same characteristics as a regular basketball. And so just another interesting thing, there's carbon fiber, there's glass fiber filaments. So there's many different types to do that. And through all this design process, it reminded me of something I'd almost forgot, that problem solving doesn't stop when you go into retirement. It just allows you to create better problems to solve. So in the next step, I'd like to go through an actual design problem that I've worked with my son, who helps me with our 3D printing, and actually go through this process and design something that is useful out in the real world. So let's talk about a real world design problem. Now, my son works for a Bobcat dealership. They sell skid steer loaders and other equipment, but they also work on that equipment. And out in this shop, they have a high-tech piece of equipment they use called a remote starter, a diagnostic tool set. It's very expensive, but they need to be out in the shop or even on site at some farm working on this piece on the equipment. They need this. And again, they were looking at, well, it's expensive. How do we protect it? So my son came up with the idea to create a box for it. And he started with just a plain wood box that the remote starter would sit in, and the cables for it would come down through here to protect the piece of equipment. And then they were using this, and it seemed to be working. But then we thought, well, why can't we design something that's a little bit better? So we started with the iterations. The first iteration was made with, as I talked about, PLA, the very basic. It was allowed us to prototype and to make use of this. So it would sit on the bed like this. The equipment would sit in here against this, and the cables would go down through here and would be protected from breaking off. And the other thing we did was embedded in the 3D print was a magnet, so they could attach it to the equipment while they're using it. Problem was the magnet really wasn't that strong, so we needed to come up with a bigger magnet to hold it and then try to improve the design. So this is where we moved from materials of PLA, which I talked about has some heat issues that it's out in the sun, it could start to warp and everything. So we switched to doing with ABS. And again, here's the design again, but now we have a magnet that's bolted in there and allows you to stick it to the equipment. The issue we found here is that this is a very strong magnet. So when you put it on the equipment, it became very difficult to get it off the equipment. So go on to the next level. We started to create the same thing, only now we created these handholds on here to help pull it off. But again, very strong magnet. And the issue was we were on the print plate like this, and all your layers are going across like this. So your strength is not in this direction. And what would happen is they'd pull this off and they'd kind of break the case. So switch the design again. This time we printed it standing up. So now all the layer lines are like this, which makes it stronger in this direction. And now we also did a smaller magnet, which still held, but it still held the equipment. But again, we still have the handholds to pull it off. They could put the name on the sides. And so this is, at this point, we've rounded and made it a little more aesthetically pleasing. But this is a product that they now use. They have it in their shop, and they've been contacted by other shops to use it. So this is a process. We went through the engineering process and made this. So if there's one thing I've learned in retirement is we don't stop being who we are just because we retire. Engineers are still engineers. Problem solvers still solve problems. Makers still make things. So 3D printing has given me something I didn't realize I was missing. It was a reason to build again, a reason to think deeply about things and to learn something new every week. But more importantly, it gave me a chance to create things that actually help people, something that makes a difference, if even in a small way. And the older I get, the more I realize that meaning is what really matters. Retirement is about stepping back. It's about stepping into challenges, on our own terms. 3D printing has been one of the ways I've been able to do that, and I'm just getting started. So if you're in retirement or just thinking about retirement and looking at ways of keeping your mind active, keeping the ability to solve problems, to create things that weren't there before, well, and 3D printing might be what you need. Not as a toy, not just as a hobby, but as a mission. A way to build a process to create new things. I'm Rick, and this is part 3 of my journey, my deployment to rediscover purpose after 41 years of military service. Next week, I'll look at a new challenge which kind of ties some of these others together. So, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone else who is looking for a new mission. And remember, you're not done. You're just being reassigned.